Hello, family. Welcome back to Dark Woke, your direct link to all things politics, comedy, and culture. I am your host, Janaya Future Khan, champ yapper, and frequent nuisance in the activist and comedy worlds. Let's get dialed in. But just before we jump, Dark Woke is a self-funded, self-produced show. We're on Patreon/Dark Woke. I am so grateful for all the support and for you just taking the time to listen. Okay, I do want to name. I'm fighting something off. There's some illness is trying to take hold of me. I hope it's not a strain of COVID. I hope it's just some sort of cold, but I've got brain fog and, the fatigue, and I keep getting hot and everything else. So I just wanted to name that. I by necessity, I'm going to make this a really short episode, but as I'm obsessed with you, so I've got to be here and speak on some things. We got to speak on some things, and I don't know if it's the illness or what, right? Or what have you. But there's a mess. This country is a mess. I know, but I was thinking about something that I had said in my last episode. So in our last episode, I made two assertions. One of the assertions was that was on these pride campaigns. And the other assertion was around, to what extent anti-Semitism was turning into a mobilized force, right? So really quickly, one should always look up counter arguments. You should always make an assertion, and I try to do that in my day-to-day life in general, and we're definitely doing that on the show. So I made this assertion about Boulder, Colorado, because I just maybe a couple hours earlier gotten a hold of that story and sat on it. And while I do still believe that that is a case, because at that activation they were talking about, Israeli hostages, that it was very much a presumption around nationality, and that extremism begets extremism. That's what we're seeing, right? Extremism creates extremism. But around whether or not anti-Semitism had turned into a mobilizing force in this country, I wanted to find proof of that, right? Because I asserted that we weren't there yet. And I was like, I believed that a week ago. Do I still believe that now? And so I looked. And there was a not widely reported story about a man who was plotting on shooting a classroom full of Jewish kids. And of course, it was he was using the slogan Free Palestine. But this is the thing. In Boulder, Colorado, there is an argument to be made around nationality versus ethnicity. In this case, and thank goodness that man was found out before he did that. So no children were harmed. Nobody was harmed. The law enforcement intervened before he could take action. So that is a story that you could very easily Google. And that is targeting children based on their ethnicity. That is mobilized anti-Semitism. The problem is that, there's obviously a massive problem, right? But we are in a position where these acts of violence, which we have predicted and spoken of, and many, many Jewish people in the diaspora, JVP, and if not now, have spoken eloquently and extensively on how these conditions, alongside us, on how these conditions, right, the conditions of everything except Israel, can't talk about Israel, can't criticize Israel, the mainstream media's hardline position that is pro-Israel, that these could only create the conditions for unbridled violence against Jewish people. Now, there's all these elements, right, because you also have white aggrievement here in the United States. You have the coalition between Christian fundamentalists and Jewish fundamentalists. So we have all these overlapping qualities, but this incident with this man who was going to shoot up a school, a classroom of Jewish kids, that is 100% based on ethnicity. That is mobilized anti-Semitism. And while it is connected, it is not a direct result of the right, as in they are literally sending their people to do harm, which has historically been the case in America in terms of when synagogues, et cetera, are attacked. What the right is doing and how they are speaking about Jewish people, how they are talking about this Jewish cabal, is another affirmation of why we need language around Jewish extremism and why it has to be very, very carefully worded. Not because it's not real, but because of how these words can be easily manipulated. The issue is currently that the right is giving a frame for why this is happening, right? Why we're seeing this powerful Jewish lobby, why we're seeing a McCarthyism that is influenced by Jewish interests across the United States. They're giving a framework for that. We are not giving a framework for that. And that is a disservice. And it enables, it's not the cause of, but it enables more harm. And the fact is, violence has increased against Muslims exponentially. Hatred has increased against Muslims exponentially. We're seeing people get deported, right? Simply for having an opinion, for being non-American, for being people of color. You know, I'm reading today about an 18-year-old who got swept up by ICE. And they're not even remotely apologetic. He's a high schooler. They were not even looking for him. They went out of their way to arrest him. And all the while, right? And I wanted to be clear. I'm a little bit addled. Just in the quick hits, I'm naming these two things that I wanted to just follow up on. So one was the Pride activations, and the other was this. So I just want to say that this is something that I'm thinking through and processing right alongside you, because as long as as long as the situation in Gaza and Palestine get worse, this is going to get worse. Violence in America against Muslims, violence in America against Jews. And I wish, this is so stupid to say. I wish we had more power. And the best that I know to do is to fight for that. But I'm incredibly disgusted, and I think it's probably because I'm feeling a little sick. I'm feeling down because today it just felt like the news and the stories. Okay, so there's two major stories, but before that, I just want to jump into the Pride activations. But the stories I'm going to be talking about is a trans woman who was arrested and convicted of murder, and how that's being talked about, which is deeply concerning to me in the context in which trans people are living. Because that too is becoming mobilized in a way, and it has been, but it's more naked in its hatred than it's ever been, than I've ever witnessed it in terms of transphobia. And then, the murder of, we'd most likely know him as, John Redcorn. But he was murdered because the actor who played John Redcorn on King of the Hill, Jonathan Joss, was murdered by his neighbor because he was gay. And that part wasn't reported on. In the same way that the way that this trans woman was reported on, she's 24, was very much so unbelievably transphobic. And these things and what they tell us in this month around Pride and what it tells us about where we're headed, which is this is a good segue to hop into the other quick notes. And again, I really appreciate your patience with me. I'm obsessed with you, as I've mentioned. So I did want to, do this episode. I want to do it well. But I am I'm having a hard time finding words and concentrating and whatever. So as soon as I'm done this, I'll wrap it in about 10 minutes. And I'm going to go to sleep because this is not the time to get sick. I don't have time for this nonsense. I'll get my calories up and do what I got to do. But, yesterday I said this stuff about this Pride activations. And, Gritty's got his little flag out. Specific sports teams are going to have their little situations. But I looked, okay? These like Pride activations, the corporate Pride shit, that there's like nothing. Like Target has got American flags going on. This is, and I want to be clear, right? And this is not to incite fear. This is to make sure that we are clear. There is a growing animus and hatred towards the entire LGBT community, but the focus is very much on trans women, trans people in general, but trans women and gay men. And when we start to see the naked attacks against gay men, this is a sign. All of this are signs of fascism's progression. And it concerns me. It very much concerns me. Like I looked and can we just go back? Just like not just Pride, but like in 2020, whatever. And the tide is turning, it will turn. But we have to first turn it. And we're still in the process of studying. We're still very, very, very much in honestly the first, year, half a year of Donald Trump's term. And so we're going to turn the tide. And unfortunately, increased violence will help bring us there. And our ability to speak on it and to frame it and to point to it. People don't want to live in that kind of uncertainty, but they've accepted this culture war and they've accepted that we, right, women, trans people, gay people, Black people, people of color, Muslims, that everybody, these people are just collateral damage. And it's never going to happen to me. It won't happen to me. And as long as it's even if it's somebody that's right below me, as long as it's not, but it's not going to happen to me. And how dangerous that thinking is. I'm going back to 2020. And I almost want to laugh at this, but hysterical. I'm remembering in 2020, McDonald's had a commercial. It was an ad with a Black trans woman in it. Right? I mean, could you imagine that happening now? Absolutely not. And I'm going to talk about this more. I just realized I didn't pull up a clip that I wanted to pull up. But the FBI made a statement, today. Help the FBI protect children. As the Attorney General has made clear, we will protect our children and hold accountable those who mutilate them under the guise of gender-affirming care. Report tips of any hospitals, clinics, or practitioners performing these surgical procedures on children at 1-800-CALL-FBI or tips.fbi.gov. Now, this is up right now. I'm not saying that that hotline should be flooded with nonsense, but that is a tactic that works. And they usually shut it down. But the fact that they would put that up right now is a sign of how far fascism has progressed. It's naked. It's acceptable. It's encouraged, right? I mentioned, the lack of sorry, this is my stupid brain. I mentioned the lack of follow through. Sorry, I mentioned how quickly these corporations have changed. how much transphobia has progressed. And of course, this 18-year-old. So before we go into more deeply into this trans stuff, and then we're going to move into Jonathan Joss. I want to play this clip for you on ICE. Like this is their response. Like when I say we're all in this together, I mean we're literally all in this together. We cannot single story these systemic issues, right? In the span of one episode, albeit I'm doing my best. I know it's a bit scattered. I hope though you're seeing all the threads, right? I'm going to pull them together right now. Just think though that in this one episode, I'm going to cover, what is happening. We touch base on anti-Semitism growing. This right here is I'm touching base on an 18-year-old kid, a high schooler that just got swept up by ICE and their response to it. The FBI literally targeting trans people and how we're talking about trans people and the murder of a gay man. If all of these things aren't clear alarm bells that fascism is ringing loud and clear and it's coming after us, every single one of us. Nothing can prove it. This is where we're at. But it means that this is the moment where we fight harder and more clearly than ever before. Here's this clip. And then while I do this, I'm sorry, I'm just going to pull this up so I can get these other clips lined up because I thought I did, but I didn't pull them up the way I wanted to. So here's this clip from ICE. Listen, I mean, think about the fact that the FBI posted that June 2nd, the day after the first day of Pride. That's intentional. That's on purpose, okay? So here's ICE talking about this. Just listen to how they talk about the fact that they just arrested this kid that they weren't even going after.
Regard to Marcelo Gomes, he remains in ICE custody. He was not the target of the investigation, but like we have repeatedly said, sanctuary policies put us in a position to go out into communities.
Sanctuary policies put us in a position to go out into communities. First of all, Patricia Hyde, ICE field director, you raggedy bitch, you were going out there anyway. You never needed permission. That's what you guys were doing. No, this is them trying to strong arm us into removing some of the few protections that remain in very specific cities and states, so that you're not just randomly collecting brown people and throwing them in jail without due process, deporting them to countries they're not even from, right? Just this is fascism.
And look for people. When jurisdictions don't cooperate with ICE and we don't arrest people in custodial arrests, then we must go out into the community. And when we go out into the community and we find others who are unlawfully here, we are going to arrest them. We've been completely transparent with that.
Disgusting.
He's 18 years old. He's unlawfully in this country. And unfortunately, we had to go to Milford to look for someone else, and we came across him, and he was arrested.
And we came across him, right? Disgusting. Disgusting.
That's where that stands.
You're looking for someone dangerous and violent?
And so the reporter says, were you looking for someone dangerous and violent?
I'll take that one. So we're looking for his father. So obviously.
So now this other dude comes in, Todd Lyons, the ICE acting director. He goes, I'll step in. So obviously.
He's the father of the year because brought his son up here illegally as well.
So yeah, the boy's father isn't father of the year because he brought his son here illegally as well. Eat a bag of dicks.
Well, and yes, we had intelligence from a local law enforcement agency. We were looking for the father. And like Field Officer Director Hyde said, they made a traffic stop on that vehicle, which was the father's vehicle. He was driving that vehicle. But like any local law enforcement officer, if you encounter someone that has a warrant, or like I said, is here illegally, we will take action on that. We're doing the job that ICE should have been doing all along, and then we enforce all immigration laws.
Just disgusting. I mean, it's inhumane. It's dogmatic. It's unthinking. This is fascism. You know, it's so funny because when people think of Marx, like, you know, in America anyway, I think, you know, this is not a well-informed place when it comes to, you know, classism and even though it claims to be classism, philosophy, you know, I don't know, Marxism. They'll just throw the word around, have no idea what it means or what it's about or what, you know. Whereas I think in places like, in other places in the West, like Canada or the UK, there's a much stronger class analysis, which is why you have much more structured labor activations, labor unions, labor movements. This country is very much obsessed with race, and it says uninformed on that, but it's obsessed with race and identity. But you know, something I come across all the time is this idea that with Marxists, we're all just going to look the same and dress the same, and that's what communism is. No, that's fucking fascism, babe. Sorry, right? That's fascism. That's what both extremes represent. But really, only one manifests regularly, and that's fascism, right? Where nobody has any power, nobody has any safety. Everybody has to look the same, sound the same, act the same, think the same. There's no art, there's no culture, there's no music, there's no thoughts. You want proof? You want proof of that? Listen to this, right? The left, we might be annoying, right? We might be sanctimonious, we might be self-righteous, whatever. We have zero issue. Sometimes we're too enthusiastic to do it. Sometimes we're too unstrategic. We have no issue going after representatives that claim to rep our interests. We have no problem going after mayors. We have no problem confronting mayors. We have no problem confronting Democrats, whether they're representatives or senators. We have no problem confronting a president when they say they're going to do something and they don't do it. We hold them accountable. That's what we do. Who on the right would dare do that to Donald Trump? Which one of these little nignogs in the manosphere, right? Joe Rogan with his shiny ass bald little head talking about this is disgusting, but won't say a goddamn word about Trump. They know when things are wrong and they do nothing about it because they're terrified and because they don't think on their own. That's what is true. I'm listening to all these right wingers who are just disgusted, right? Some of them at what is happening and yet will never confront the president about that. Not even Candace Owens, right? She's the most audacious of that whole cohort, the most, right? She'll say, I disagree with him on that. It's not okay. He needs to be doing more. But she actually won't confront him. There will not be an organizing body around that. But you know who does do that? We do. We do. We have no problem taking Kamala Harris to account on the endless slaughter and murder of children in Gaza. We have no problem taking on Joe Biden for the same thing. Do we need to be more strategic about it? Sure. Do we need to have a better, more robust analysis on foreign policy and, work at building power, not just simply critiquing it? Of course. But we fucking organize and we take action when we know things are wrong. We have no issue confronting power. That is a sign of a thinking body of people, an active body of people, a group of people who are not towing the company line. You don't see that with fascism. With fascism, oh no, there's terror about getting into the crosshairs of power. They're terrified of it. They can't hold a single person accountable for anything. That's fascism. That's cowardice. That's what homogeneity is. That's what they represent. It disgusts me. It disgusts me that you could sit there and say, aren't they sweeping up? Aren't they, they just picked up this man. He's a sheet metal worker, Kilmar, and, that's not okay, but they won't do a goddamn thing about it. That's what disgusts me. You want to talk about how annoying we are? No, we get to talk about how annoying we are. You don't do shit to be able to say shit. Sorry, okay. Whew. Back to, but I'm so sick of it. Today was just one of those days where I'm raw because of I think I'm sick, and so I can't compartmentalize as well as I typically do, and it's so endless. And I think about how I've been following, the evolution of for lack of a better word, thought in the manosphere when they're watching this person who said, I mean, he said, Donald Trump fed you all these promises. You think any one of those folks are going to actively speak out against them? No. There are people who, normal, everyday people who are more willing to do that, who voted for Donald Trump, who are more willing to do that than any of these fucking losers. We don't kowtow to power. We don't fucking kiss the ring. That's not who we are. And you know what? I'm proud of us for that. I really am. I'm proud of us for that. Fascists breeds cowardice. We are the rebels. We're the rebellions. We're the ones who lead the rebellions. We're the rebels. Funny that they talk and they act like they are, but there isn't a single rebellious fucking thought in those bird brain heads of theirs. Not one. Nope, that's us. Okay. Oh, I just expended a lot of energy there that I don't have. Okay. You know what? This is actually a good moment because we tapped on Gaza and Palestine. And there are some things that I want to affirm as well that we've sort of covered in the past. But basically, that Netanyahu, right? We talked about this and we know it to be true, but I think it's so important to really hone in on it. That Netanyahu, as they're running around talking about Hamas, 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 I said this several months ago. I said this several years ago. Hamas is Hamas's position in Palestine. I mean, at this point, right? It's hard. I hardly call it a position in anything, right? Is a direct result of Netanyahu. Netanyahu chose Hamas all those years ago. And so when he talks about the need to kill Hamas, get rid of Hamas, whatever, this was always part of the plan. Genocide was always part of the plan. Don't take it from me, right? I mean, I said what I said, but don't take it from me. Take it from a former Israeli prime minister. Take it from Omer. Take it from him. Because he lays bare what is true, what was true then, and what their intentions are now with what Netanyahu's intentions are now in Gaza. So let me just pull this up here. And then I'll drink a bit of water and get my shit together.
The question is, what else can we achieve by expanding the military operation, which can...
Oh, and sorry, I'm going to pull it back to the beginning. So this is on Piers Morgan, Uncensored. Yeah, and he's talking to Omer, the former Israeli prime minister. And it should speak to as well, I think, it should affirm that this vision of Israel is not the shared vision of Israelis or even former Israeli leadership. And that matters because the greatest threat to Jews everywhere, and particularly those in the Jewish diaspora, is Benjamin Netanyahu. He's the greatest threat. Right? Smotrich, all these people, whatever, they're also disgusting human beings. But Netanyahu is the greatest threat to Jewish people in the diaspora and around the world.
The question is, what else can we achieve by expanding the military operation, which can justify the cost? The cost for us, the cost for the hostages, and the cost of non-involved Palestinians. And the feeling is that we have come to a point where a leadership decision has to be made to stop it. Mm-hmm. And the majority of Israelis believe that Netanyahu carries on and wants to expand it, not because of any national interest that justifies it, but because of political considerations. Mm-hmm. What is it, if not a crime?
So do you think he should be at The Hague one day for this?
Look, there should be a voice, and if as a result of the fact that I was Prime Minister and I'm fairly well known in the international community, that people want to hear what I have to say, I have to say it, yes. I'm prepared, I'm very The question.
So, and there's another really key segment here that I wanted to just play for you. And this is where he really goes in on the intentions.
It seems to me, and I don't know what your assessment would be, but it seems to me that Benjamin Netanyahu has been hijacked by some very right-wing people like Smodrix, Ben-Gvir and others in this cabinet, who have always spoken in a kind of genocidal language about their aspirations for what should happen in Gaza and to the Palestinian people. And that Netanyahu has been dragged, as you say, for personal motivational reasons to their way of thinking, because he knows the moment the war is over, then he will be held accountable for what happened on October the 7th. And secondly, he will be facing a corruption trial himself, as you said. So there's no motivation for him to end the war. And now it seems that the whole attitude from the Israeli government is being fueled and driven by these very right-wing people like Smodrich and Ben-Gvir, who really do want to see all the Palestinians out of Gaza.
They want to see the Palestinians out of Gaza in order to resettle there. They don't want to see them deported because they want to prepare the ground for a Trump Tower hotel, as maybe some interpreted statements of President Trump to mean. They want it because they want to resettle there, and this is part of their grand design.
The whole entire point of this is to take over Gaza, to expel or exterminate every Palestinian that they can, so that they can annex Gaza. It is a real estate endeavor that we are seeing genocide and ethnic cleansing. So because of real estate interests, because of white supremacy. That level of evil is incomprehensible to me.
They want to do the same in the West Bank. Already now they are inspiring the Hilltop youth, which I call the atrocious youth, for almost daily attacks against Palestinians in the West Bank, Palestinian Arabs in the West Bank. And they are burning their groves, olive groves. They are burning their homes. They are.
So right there, that's called ecological warfare, right? So burning the olive groves at different points in times. Like, you have to remember, Palestinian people, they love the land. They love the land, just like all indigenous peoples do. And there were tribes back in the day, thousands of years ago, Jewish tribes that lived on that land alongside Palestinian ones. And then for some were driven out, many chose to leave. And then, they returned. I made sure I did research. I wanted to make sure. And can you imagine, like, that Palestinians never left. They never left. They stayed there. They loved that land. And not only will they burn olive trees, I've been in fields where they planted foreign pine trees just so nothing would ever grow there again. Those are not people who love the land. Those are not people who are caretakers of the land. Those are not people who are invested in the land. It's about extraction and exploitation. That is Western logic. That's colonialism. And something that, this former PM, Olmert, is saying too, is that it's not just Gaza, of course, it's also the West Bank. There are expansion projects in both of these places. And their intention is to starve them out and then blame Palestinians for the violence that Israeli people commit against them.
Attacking people, they're killing people. This is totally obnoxious and something that can't be tolerated. And unfortunately, it's tolerated because the fact is that it continues, and in most cases, the ones that are arrested are the victim Palestinians, is not the Israeli attackers. And this is part of what I am campaigning against.
So they're attacked, right? Their olive groves are burned to the ground. Their homes are burned to the ground, incinerated. Their children murdered. Do you know, I read a story today of children, starving people, Palestinians, who were looking for bits of food amongst blown up bodies, amongst murdered people by the state of Israel. Like trying to sift human remains from flour because they're starving. May we never, ever be forgiven for this. And I'm more than happy to spend the rest of my life trying to find some way to redeem myself for having been a witness. I don't know. I'm sick. I don't know what I think you understand what I'm feeling,
Against. Now, question that you have outlined.
All right, that's the end of that clip, and but it illustrates that the assertions that you've made and that I've made and that the things that we know to be true are in fact true, and it's not conjecture, it's not hyperbole, it's there, and I hope in that we've also seen in listening to this a different kind of leadership. It's really hard, but we have to be very disciplined about not dealing in absolutes. I find myself wanting to be in absolutes all the time. It's partly why I reflected on yesterday's episode and, was like, let's find out, because things are changing so rapidly and there's so much hurt and there's so much anger and rage. It is incredibly difficult not to think in terms of absolutes. There's a different vision here of what Israel could be. And if you are a person that believes that Israel shouldn't exist, okay. I'm not going to contest that, right? I have no desire to. Because I'm interested in the fact that it's here, and that's just that. That is true of every nation state. Because if we have proof of anything else in this moment, of nothing else, in this moment, we are seeing in real time how nationalism creates extremism. The Jewish diaspora does not stand by, not even fucking remotely, what Netanyahu is doing. In fact, they condemn it, right? Nationalism creates the conditions of extremism. There it is. And that doesn't mean that we should make small. The reality of what Israelis are okay being complicit in. There absolutely has been resistance. There just hasn't been a fraction of how much there should have been. And it hasn't been consistent enough. The same way that our government here seized power, right? It happened there as well. The level of mobilization was not even close, right? And of course, their population is smaller. But there's something, that level of violence gets normalized. I think there's a lot of indoctrination that happens, and they have the infrastructure to do that indoctrination. That's why they have the birthright stuff and everything else. None of this would have been possible without the United States. And why? Why is the United States so keen on this? Well, yeah, because it's existential for America. They cannot maintain their weakening position as a superpower in the world without having Israel as an ally. That is not a country that is a leader of the free world. That's an act of desperation. Donald Trump should be doing so much more. The fact that he's letting Benjamin Netanyahu do whatever the fuck he wants, that's not a leader either. That's just a coward. This is a clip right here from a friend of mine, Deanna Boutsu. She's a Palestinian lawyer, and she also was one of the folks alongside the IMEU that took myself and several other, we were Black delegates or Black freedom fighters, and led us through Palestine. So this is this is a clip of her on Breezy Politics, where she's sort of challenging this idea that the violence is only committed against certain types of people in Israel.
They do not recognize my right to exist.
Listen, have you ever been arrested by Israeli police? Have you ever been beaten by Israeli police? Have you
Yes,
been ever...
actually, I have.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she has, like, multiple times. She's fighting an Israeli diplomat. Or debating, sorry.
I really feel... You can check the bruises. She's all bruised up, right?
Let's just be clear. First, you're saying that...
This is Mehdi Hassan, ZTO and an American, he's a journalist.
If you haven't been beaten by the Israeli police, you're an equal member of society. And then when someone says they have been beaten by Israeli police, you say, where are the bruises?
No, listen.
But one thing that he's conveniently overlooking is that Israel describes itself as being a Jewish state, which by its very definition excludes me. And the state is founded on this concept of Jewish privilege, which means that when the Supreme Court, this court that he lauds so much, has faced the question of whether Israel's a Jewish state or a democracy, it has always chosen Jewish state, which means that Jewish privilege exists. What they fail to recognize is that we didn't come to Israel. We didn't immigrate to Israel. Israel came to us.
And that is true. That is true. The best way to win a debate, a lot of the time, I say there's two major strategies. Obviously, you create a counter narrative, you contest the point, you poke holes in it, you can destroy it. There's so many different ways. But sometimes it's just to absorb it. So people are saying, oh, well, actually, no, we own this land. We were here first. I was like, okay, I want to contest that point. And I did enough research to be like, oh, okay, yeah, there were these tribes here, but Palestinians literally never left. They never left. They never left. They loved the land. And they're as horrific and unfair and fucked up as 1948 was, where a bunch of Western countries just decided that half of Palestine would now belong to Israelis, right? That's not how things should happen. But that's what happens when one extreme, horrific, disgusting event, which was the Holocaust, the Nazis, murdering 6 million Jews, right? You have these extreme, horrific measures that led to other things to try to correct it or right size it, which just created harm against, millions more people. Everything that Israel has done since its creation in 1948 has been on purpose. What I mean is, it didn't have to be this way. It didn't. But Israel and every leader in Israel, funded by American interests and America's brand of violence, is precisely why every single decade, every several years, every year, Israel has inched and creeped its way further and further into Palestinian territory. It's murdered more and more Palestinian people because, again, anytime you challenge this Jewish extremist logic, and remember that Israel, to say it's a Jewish state, is say it's an ethno-state. What we're seeing here in America is the desire to create America as an ethno-state. In both circumstances, it's a white ethno-state. I'm not going to waste time on ethnicity and shades. These are white supremacist factions. And they don't always require everybody looking like a ginger. The logic of Israel's existence, right, and Palestinian danger falls apart the second that you challenge the expansion. It falls apart because it requires a level of honesty, right? If you want to eradicate Hamas, and again, Netanyahu handpicked Hamas, cut the Palestinian Authority off at the legs because the Palestinian Authority actually, was picking up steam around peace. Netanyahu didn't want that because then they couldn't absolutely justify everything that they wanted to do. At that point in time, they still felt like they kind of had to. Now they don't at all. Gosh, I can't believe I think I found like a little stride here, which is good. I am getting a bit of a headache, so I'll be mindful of that with these other stories. But there was so much to say here. Do you know what I mean? There's so much to say. But that's the thing. It falls apart because to say, okay, well, we have a right to exist. We have a right to be safe. Okay, then why do you keep expanding? Right? Because they could say, oh, murder for murder, which not even close to being true, right? Not even a fraction close. It still doesn't speak to the expansion, the endless greed and expansion. Because that would require engaging with the simple fact that since its founding, the entire plan was to eliminate Palestine. We keep going full circle. And that's what countries do. That's what these nations do when they are, by design. We are still grappling with the very same conditions that America's founding created. If you're lucky enough to be on the right side of the fence, it works out great for you for the most part, right? But the majority of people are kept out. This story now, it is Pride Month. On day 2, I referenced the fact that the FBI put out a statement for a tip line for the mutilation of kids receiving gender-affirming care. Just really disgusting stuff. There's a clip of Joe Rogan, and he's talking to Adam Conover, who is like a podcaster, like one of these like white boys that, look, there's just a lot of white guys on I should say progressive or democratic, like lefty white guy podcasts that are massive. And it's really hard for me to wrap my head around. If I'm being honest, like I'll listen to them and I'll just be like, why? Who likes this? Why? Right? I mean, don't get me wrong, the production value is great. Like I'm literally on OBS. I don't mean, but they actually have, as of now, they have almost nothing to say. They have like nothing to say. It's a lot of questions, a lot of I don't knows, but not a lot of offerings. And that's precisely it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with having years where questions are asked, okay? But I would expect better. And the problem is that these folks are in positions where they are going to be engaging, within the manosphere, with other high level, people, other white guys who yap, and often don't know what they're talking about. But I'm so sick and tired of watching trans rights get trampled, in part because the people who are being asked to speak on this are fucking stupid or bad at it and simply don't know. I watched Hassan Piker get dog walked by Christian Walker. And I want to be clear, a big part of it is because we didn't do our job generating discourse. But even still, when you have this position, be well versed. You have a responsibility to make up your own shit and your own talking points, research where we fail, and pick up the slack. Here's Joe Rogan challenging Adam Conover around gender affirming care for children.
Choosing to add hormones to a child's body, that's a choice.
It's a choice on the part of the parent. It's not a choice on the part of the child to like in the same way that being gay isn't a choice. Yeah.
Okay, but if that's who they are, if they think that they're a girl, why do you have to give them hormones to make them more of a girl?
So this clip has been doing the rounds. Okay, I'm gonna let it play out in a moment. It's only 54 seconds. But this is what I'm saying. These assertions get made, and then you have to, try to you have to try to refute the assertion that what he just said isn't true, right? Like the question Joe Rogan asked was, yeah, but why can't they just be a girl? If they say they're a girl, like why do they have to take hormones? That's actually what happens for children. The quote unquote transition is a social one. They're not taking hormones. That comes much later, but they're using the word children here. And it's like, what are we talking about? Are we talking about teenagers? Because that does shift things somewhat, but they're saying the word children. Adam is not even contesting that word. This is a guy that many, many people listen to. And I'm sorry, I'm nothing against the guy. We've done a comedy show together. He's not my favorite comedian, but he's smart. He's smart, generally. And he sounds like an absolute fucking idiot here. And it's not entirely his fault. But in a way it is, because I'm like, what are you doing with your time? Why are you even bothering to show up if not to win the fucking fight? Am I wrong about this? I don't believe I am. You want to know why I'm fucking had it today? And maybe in general, because I'm looking at objectively, not compartmentalizing, not repressing, not giving myself a good spin. I'm looking at objectively what the fuck we're dealing with here. Where the FBI on June fucking 2nd is putting out a statement on a fucking tip line. Where these corporations that were just fucking elbowing people out of the fucking way to try to get to a fucking transgender or a black person only a couple years ago won't even put up a goddamn flag in the window because they're terrified of the fucking fascists. This isn't about corporate responsibility. I don't give a fuck about that. It's what it indicates. And these are our fighters?
Because I'm sorry, can you expand on the question?
It's a simple question.
That's the thing. Can you explain the question? It's because he doesn't have a fucking talking point about it. You and I, we have gone over this so many times. I think I've had a lot of talks with friends. I have zero interest in promotion. I don't know how to do it. I don't like doing it. I don't want to do it. It's not natural to me. And I'm making some adjustments over the next 3 months to try to ameliorate some of that, because I feel a sense of responsibility in this too. This isn't just about pointing fingers, but it's incredibly unnatural to me. I want to do work. I largely do work that's unseen. I'm not entitled enough to be like, everybody should listen to what I have to say about this right now. And I get in the way sometimes. But in moments like this, I do feel like this pressure, and so these things are coming, but I'm putting myself in this too, right? It's not enough to just be like Adam Conover, or like this guy or that guy. It's like all of us. But we've disputed this, right? Not only is that not happening, right? Where just like, get these children on hormones. But even then, during puberty, right, with these 100% reversible puberty blockers. But even then in puberty, you have children, or I should say young people, who are not trans-identified that are on hormone therapy. I'd poke fun at the fact that he's on hormone therapy himself. But we're talking about this hysteria about children, and it's bullshit. Because you don't give a fuck about kids.
You say that the child thinks it's a girl, so you're going to give the child hormones.
Mm-hmm.
If the child thinks it's a girl, let it be a girl. Like, you don't have, why are you adding hormones? If you're shooting hormones into a child and you're affecting the child's development, you're saying that's not a choice. That's nonsense. Of course it's a choice. You're choosing to chemically.
So because Adam Conover had fucking nothing to say, nothing to offer, Joe Rogan, who did ask a very simple and direct question, is fucking hammering the shit out of him right? These are people who are already inclined to agree. There's no counter argument there because Adam didn't do his fucking job. Because it's abstract to him. Trans people are fucking real to me. I look in the mirror and I see one, sort of. I'm waiting for the hormones to take. Every day I wake up a little bit prettier. I'm furious. But these are not abstract people. These are not abstractions to me. They're not ideas. These are fucking people who every day fight a little bit hard to fight every day and wake up in a world that fucking hates them to be a little bit more themselves, which is the bravest fucking thing you can do. Because fascists only ever want to be like everybody else. Fucking loser behavior. No child is getting put on fucking hormones ever at all, period. Teens, after going through a lot of checks and balances with psychologists and therapists and their family and their friends and their community, some of them end up on fucking hormones after using puberty blockers, which are 100% reversible. All of this is available to cis children, which is why this is discriminatory. So why don't you, Joe Rogan, explain to me why you aren't concerned about the vast majority of children who use hormone therapy are cis-identified? Why aren't you concerned about their safety? Because there is no danger to it. You just don't fuck with trans people, and you bought into this bullshit culture war agenda, but you're the free thinker, my guy. And we get fucking Adam Conover, who has the fucking slick back haircut of a lesbian, and none of the panache.
Change this child's body. You're choosing to inject things into this child's body on a regular basis that are going to radically affect the physical development of their body.
Yeah.
And you're saying that this isn't a choice. Choosing.
Ridiculous. Ridiculous. When I listened to that today, I was furious. I'm still furious. I'm going to tell you now about this story. I say everything's going to be short, and then I just don't. Apparently, I even when I'm ill. This is the headline in the New York Post, okay? Knife-wielding transgender woman accused of killing NYC postal worker smiles, rolls eyes in creepy video, okay? I looked this story up. I read articles in CBS, ABC, so not just the New York Post. It's all very much in the same vein. Jaya Cruz is about 24. Her and the man who was murdered, Ray Hodges, a black man, got into an altercation at a deli. It was over a sandwich. Whose sandwich was what? According to mainstream news, they got into dispute over which sandwich. And like who the sandwich belonged to. And according to the news, she just spit on him and then immediately started stabbing him. That story is consistent across multiple platforms. But when I looked online, right? Like when I combed through places like Reddit and the disgusting town hall that is Twitter, that is still one of the best information sharing platforms, even though it is equally good or better at sharing disinformation. It's a lot to wade through. They tell me a different story, right? That they've seen videos of them getting into an altercation and Ray Hodges physically threatening her, pushing on her and attempting to even punch her before she warned him. This is true, and it's like you can in a video that I've seen. This is true. She warned him and told him, I have a knife. So she stabbed him multiple times, and people who have no agenda, who have either, claim to be eyewitness or have direct connection to somebody who was there, they say that it was self-defense. In the courtroom, the family of Ray Hodges was there. And I want to be clear, this is this 36-year-old black man, father of two, okay, postal worker, just for all intents and purposes, just seems like a good guy, right? He was murdered. That there's no doubt about that. But why and how actually isn't even contested. Why does matter. Was it self-defense? That does matter. While Jaya was in the courtroom getting sentenced, she'd been sentenced 15 years. The family was chanting that she's a man. And I'm not talking about like in a small way. I mean, like there's coverage of this. They were literally chanting that she's a man. And I have a lot of empathy for what grief can do, what it does. I just need us to understand that that's not happening in a silo. This is all directly connected to the growing, rapidly mobilizing transphobia that exists across this country. 914 bills are anti-transgender currently in the United States. That's in 914 bills in 49 states that are anti-transgender. 109 of those bills have passed. 729 are active. 76 have failed. The New York Post and other news sources. Oh, by the way, I do want to make one other amendment to yesterday's episode. I said that the when I read the quote about Elon Musk, that it was from the New York Times, and that was, but the specific number 300,000 came from the Boston Review. I forgot to mention that, so there you go. I want us to hold these transgender bills, what happened to Jaya, right? What we just listened with Rogan, and now go to Jonathan Joss. Okay, this is the guy who played John Redcorn, a brilliant actor, hilarious man, also very gay, married to his husband. Every major news outlet is just like, Jonathan Joss, actor John Redcorn, murdered by neighbor. It was a homophobic attack. He was murdered because he was gay. And his husband has been very vocal about that. But you wouldn't know because it's buried in the fucking story. You'd have to just scroll all the way down, even in AP News, okay? Even in AP News, you have to scroll down. This is the headline: King of the Hill voice actor Jonathan Joss fatally shot outside his Texas home. I just want to make a comparison, just for us to understand who gets to be a victim in America right now, right? The person who attacked the action, the pro-Israel action in Boulder, Colorado, has been charged with a hate crime. I've never been one to, I think hate crime legislation and how it's applied is just bullshit. It's like, just do the fucking work that you're supposed to do. Do the fucking work you're supposed to do. Let's get better infrastructure, better healthcare, better education. Let's, I don't know, think about fucking reparations. All this, if you actually want to repair harm, this I do. Hate crime legislation doesn't fucking do that. But immediately, that man who did that horrific thing in Boulder, Colorado, was charged with a hate crime. He was originally indicted, and then it was added. which is far more serious. This right here, Jonathan Joss was murdered. And it's not that. Now, this isn't to say, oh no, I think I'm out of water. This isn't to say that only but these types of, this should make clear how white power, whiteness works, who gets to be considered a victim or not, how it fuels and engenders more anti-Semitism when you say that certain people are entitled to protection, right? And advocacy and certain others aren't. I think something is like changing in me in a good way. And maybe it's always been there, and maybe it's just because of the sickness, but I think I've been in so much pain taking in all these things every day that I put such a tight lid on my anger. And I'm angry. I'm so angry and I'm so hurt every day. And maybe I just need to create a little more space for it, because I was today, so let me talk about Jonathan Joss, sorry. I'm just so angry about this. I'm so angry about all of it. Jonathan Joss, right? Again, voice actor, King of the Hill, John Redcorn. He was also, had a couple cameos, I think, in Parks and Rec. He was so fucking funny. He said in Parks and Rec that white people were terrified of curses. It's just so funny. Because they'll play like the native man, and anyway. So he's fatally shot. He's 59 years old, right? Shot on Monday. Here's AP News. I'm going to read it exactly as is, okay? So I just gave you that first little stanza. Here we go. Police were dispatched to a home in South San Antonio about 7 p.m. Sunday on a shooting in progress call. When officers arrived at the scene, they found the wounded 59-year-old near the street. The officers attempted life-saving measures until EMS arrived. EMS pronounced the victim deceased, San Antonio police said in a statement. Joss's husband, Tristan Kern de Gonzalez, confirmed the actor's death to the Associated Press in a text. The two were married earlier this year on Valentine's Day. In an email, San Antonio police did not immediately provide any information on what prompted the shooting. In a statement, de Gonzalez said he and Joss had previously faced harassment, much of it openly, quote, openly homophobic. Joss's husband said the person who killed the actor yelled violent homophobic slurs before opening fire. He was murdered by someone who could not stand the sight of two men loving each other, de Gonzalez said. Before the shooting, de Gonzalez and Joss were checking mail at Joss's home, which had been heavily damaged during a January fire that claimed the lives of their 3 dogs. Oh. A man approached the two and threatened them with a gun, de Gonzalez said. Jonathan and I had no weapons. We were not threatening anyone. We were grieving. We were standing side by side. When the man fired, Jonathan pushed me out of the way. He saved my life, de Gonzalez said in a statement. After the shooting, authorities arrested 56-year-old Sigfrido Alvarez Ceja and charged him with murder in Joss's death. Court records did not list an attorney who could speak on behalf of whatever. Okay, now this is just them talking. This is the best reporting. This is the best reporting that I could find. This is the most balanced reporting that I could find. And look, I'm not looking for a classification of hate crime, not a formal one, because I've never thought that was a great idea, and it's very unevenly applied. But it barely got talked about. And I'm going to tell you something. This whole gay marriage thing, right? Sure. We could poke fun at it just like we did, the pride things in corporate, whatever. But it is an indication of something, right? A rebuke of fascism, a rebuke of Christian fundamentalism, Christian extremism. When gay men in particular begin to be openly targeted, trans women have always been openly targeted. And I'm still irritated with NBs. That's not lost. But trans women have always been targeted. Always. When they start going after gay men like this, when it's almost like that's actually the last, because that's the goal of Christian fundamentalism. That's what it wants to do. Not even Donald Trump is willing to touch gay marriage. But then again, one might have thought that about abortion as well. And that's just it. We made those things happen. Fascism seeks to unmake them. Were they the things that we necessarily wanted? No. Like, you know what I mean? They weren't like gay marriage wasn't like number one on the list. And sure, it might have been for a certain subset. I mean, I would love, honest to God, if I was a gay man, make me white, and I'd be in two white gay men. Both of us, we would just make so much money together. Like, that's a good way to sell it. Yeah, they were advocating for it. I love the yap, but I need to care more about money. I just don't. I should. I have a really hard time doing it. I'm like, it'll be there when I need it. And when I have it, I give it away. I don't know where that comes from, but I'm happy that's the way I am, even though sometimes things can be a bit trickier. All of these stories, first of all, Jonathan Joss, for my entire generation, was, I mean, I know we're like, oh, King of the Hill animation, whatever, but his character was pivotal. He was beautiful. His character on King of the Hill, was beautiful. He was dignified. He was super hot. He was intelligent. They didn't make fun of his mysticism or practices. And if you were a fan, that they actually had, particularly for that time, very cutting edge, strong politic on the genocide of indigenous peoples. And just unbelievably well timed. And Dale, who was the husband of Nancy, who John Redcord was having an affair with, was the freak conspiracy theorist, fringy person that is now representative of not just every fucking idiot in MAGA, but a lot of this administration. It spoke to a different time, but for a lot of people, I would argue for most people, it was their only exposure to indigenous people, to Native people, on any level. And in that way, Jonathan Joss informed an entire generation of people. And he was murdered for no other reason than that he was gay. And I want you to take a moment and think about, how few Native men in general, Native anybody, Native women, how many Native women disappear, but how they reaching maturation as a Native person, as an indigenous person in North America is a feat unto itself. Every metric is designed to destroy every metric of American progress was designed to destroy First Nations people, indigenous people, Native people. We live in a fascist state. This isn't about fascism taking over. Fascism is here. Do you know what I mean? It's here. And a man who was of, Apache and Comanche, I don't know if I'm saying that right, I hope I am, descent, who lived as a proud Native man, was murdered because he was gay. This is where we live. And this is not what we will ever accept. I will never accept this. There are moments, and I don't know if I'm getting a bit delirious. 'Cause I usually keep a wrap on my, big existential feelings. But there are moments when my feelings of powerlessness just are debilitating. Like are just when you know something's wrong and you just want to be able to make it stop. And you feel so betrayed. Because how could those in power deny the wrongness of what we're seeing? How could anyone? And then I remember again Angela Davis saying, I never lost hope when she was facing life in prison. And maybe I watched her face, I heard her voice when she said it. It felt true. It's not, and even if it is not true, that's the job. Because we are the imaginers, we are the disruptors. And if we can't see it, if we can't envision it, then it actually can't be done. So we must envision, we must disrupt. And if you take a look back at any good thing that's come out of these nation states, it's because people like you, it is the work and the result of people like you. And there have always been people like us, always. We just don't have a rapacious greed and need for power. We're facing a very sophisticated form of fascism because it parades as something else. Fascism used to be much more naked, just much more obvious, much more clear. Oh, we hate them, exterminate them all. I mean, that's what's fucking happening in Israel. And yet there's a debate still about it because fascism has grown incredibly sophisticated. Fascism discovered PR. Here, we're literally living in it, and we're still wondering if it is or not. Today, I'm all right. I'm a decently, smart guy. But it's a hard thing to confront. I look for these glimmers. I look for the disruptors. I look for the signs. But I just had to. I just had to be objective about it. It's not fully realized fascism, but it is fascism, and we're headed that way. And we will not go quietly into that fucking night. Absolutely not. No. I believe in us. That, even with this confrontation, even with my unhingedness, stands true. So, you know what? I'm going to drink a fuck ton of Theraflu. And if I think I'm going to be okay, but if I do fall a little ill, there might not be an episode tomorrow. And for those on the, wondering about, the Dark World Substack and everything else, we're transferring ownership. And for whatever reason, it's not a simple thing. It's something that the higher ups at Substack got to get involved in for reasons I don't know. And, I might just put some things out anyway, but I'll make sure that, I'm present if there isn't an episode tomorrow, but I really want there to be one. So I really hope I can, sleep this off and eat this off. And in the meantime, I'll make sure that I, am online and pretending, I'm well and pretending we're all well, but we're all sick with disgust and rage and anger, and you're not alone in that. Don't let these things consume you and don't let them change you. We don't deal in absolutisms. That's fascist logic. It's cancerous fascism. It is when cells replicate themselves needlessly and over and over and over again, and it makes you sick. Rage and anger and disgust can do that too. Remember that there is and has always been more of us. There has always been more of us. And any time and every time we've come together, we've won. So, here's to the great battle of beliefs and the long fight and road ahead. We're in good company. So, with that, just want to say thank you so much for listening to Dark Woke. It means the absolute world to me. This show is a labor of love. I try to have episodes all the time. I hope I don't fucking have COVID. My little lungs. Whatever. Sorry. Patreon /DarkWoke. That's where you can find it. Hit me up. I'll be looking it up. I'll be thinking of you. Now my brain is starting to melt. Oh my God. Okay. You know the Gmail. It's darkwokejfk@gmail.com. Anyway, just want to say shout out to you, the listeners that make it all possible. Love you. Peace.